This time in the Muletown Speed Shop, we rebuild this T56 transmission, convert it from LT to LS so we can bolt it up to our GM 4.8 liter LS to put in our 65 Oldsmobile, which is going to be my version of the ultimate daily driver. In the previous episode of Muletown Speed, you saw us hatch a plan to build this 65 Oldsmobile into a car that could rival new cars in terms of reliability, comfort, and economy. We accomplished this by starting with a 4.8 liter Gen 4 LS engine out of a van that we got for approximately $250. This LS engine had a lifter tick in it, so we took it apart, fixed the lifter, and put it all back together with reusing head gaskets and head bolts, things like that, and got it all ready to go in the car. Now this big hunk of aluminum is the mid plate. The mid plate and the input shaft are the two components that you need to swap out in order to get this to work. That being said, since it was already blown apart anyway to swap out these two components, I decided to go through with a Hawks rebuild kit and swap out synchros and do some upgrading while I was in there anyway. Now the trick to this whole operation is the end play of the main shaft and the counter shaft. These have to be adjusted to within a certain spec that you can find online. But you do that by adding shims behind the bearing races that go in the mid plate. Now once that's done, the rest of it's fairly straightforward as far as assembling the transmission, and there's plenty of resources online to show you the correct way to do that. I think maybe the only other tricky thing would be getting the shift rails all lined back up right where they're supposed to, but really trial and error, just kind of play with it and you can get it to fit right. There's really only one way for those parts to go back in there, and you'll know it when you get it. So the main reason I'm showing this is to show you that it's really not that big of a deal to rebuild a manual transmission. They're very simple and they're easy to work on. They really don't require any special tools as long as you've got a good set of snap ring pliers. This is pretty easy for the average shade tree mechanic. Today, it's morning time in the Muletown Speed Shop, and the little man and I got tired last night, so we didn't get that far in putting the transmission back together, but we did make a little bit of progress. We did get the case, the main part of the case, with the shift selector all schmutz onto the mid plate there. So now we can start doing everything that needs to go in here. But before I do that, we have farm chores to do. Part of the reason why these projects take so long is because life gets in the way. Well, part of life is taking care of your livestock and your tomatoes and everything else, which sometimes means you get to do fun stuff like feeding old strawberries to a pig, because pigs love strawberries. Piggy, come here. Dun 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 dun. Diddle-oo. Look. Alright, so next I want to talk about clutch manipulation. So on an LT style transmission, you've got a mechanical linkage. Basically there's a cable and some rods that connect your foot on the clutch pedal with this fork lever here, and it actually engages and disengages the clutch. When you switch to an LS style, you have what's called a hydraulic throwout bearing. So you've actually got somewhat, think of it as a brake line that runs from your clutch pedal down to a hydraulic slave cylinder, which mounts inside the bell housing like that. So when you normally get these in stock form, they have a quick connect here, which you would connect to like an F-body hydraulic clutch line. I don't really like these. There's some sort of residual pressure or some sort of check valve that makes these hard to bleed and get all the air out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out and I'm going to put just a standard -3 like a clutch or a brake line in there, and I'll show you how I do that here. But the other problem is that this big fat hydraulic, if you can see that thing rubs and does not actually fit through the slot in the bell housing, so I would have to clearance that anyway. But that is supposed to be the bleeder, so there's a hole there for the bleeder, and then the bottom one there is where your clutch line would go. I'm going to get rid of that because I don't like it, so I'm going to show you how I do that. So inside of there, you can see is just a real simple plug, and there's a seal in there too that I'll fish out, but then that roll pin goes through that groove right there and retains it inside there. So what I'm going to replace this with is an adapter that's going to accomplish the same thing, but it's going to get me to a male JIC, or this would be an AN fitting, a -3 male. So that will then connect to some flex line that I got, like so, and it will run up to the master cylinder. So that's what I'm gonna rig up here. So for now, before I install this transmission, I've got to install just this adapter, which is a Russell brand 640281. Comes in a pack of 2. It's pretty cheap. So this is gonna go in there once I fish that other seal out, and then I'll be able to repin it. Okay, so now we're going to install this hydraulic throwout bearing. So not a whole lot to it. Get her all the way on there. Alright, so now you can see the fitting is fairly deep inside the bell housing, so we're going to want to attach our hydraulic line before we bolt it to the engine. Done. So that about does it for our T56 build. On the next episode of Muletown Speed, you'll see us bolt this up to our 4.8 LS engine that we built in the previous episode and get it in the 1965 Oldsmobile. Don't miss out, it's going to be good.